Welcome to the Access to Innovators podcast, powered by the premier life skills university, High Point University.
Hi, thank you for joining us. My name is Cassie Williams. I graduated from High Point University in 2015 with a degree in international business, and I'm currently enrolled in HPU's master's program in communication and business leadership. Currently, I work full-time as Senior Manager of Integrated Communications for Krispy Kreme Donuts, based out of our global headquarters in Charlotte, North Carolina. Today, I'm going one-on-one with High Point University's Corporate Executive in Residence, Mr. Russell Weiner. Russell, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. To start, I'd like to start by talking about a common theme at HPU, a focus on transformation. It's something that students here are constantly encouraged to work on, whether it be personal or professional transformation. You first joined Domino's as the Chief Marketing Officer. Can you talk with me about transformation both in your own career and in your company?
Oh, sure. We'll do career first.
Perfect.
Since we're out of school, and then
Great.
we'll talk company. The one thing I'd say is, transformation is not something you set out to do with a certain date on the calendar. I'm going to transform myself. I'm going to transform my company by April of 2024. That doesn't happen, right? Transformation is a process. A lot of it is exploration. And so when I think about my own career, I started college. I was pre-med.
Wow.
Didn't then I'm not doing what I wanted it to do. Then I changed to pre-law.
Oh my gosh.
And I graduated really not having taken any marketing courses in my life. And I ended up, being CMO at Domino's, and before that running marketing at Pepsi. And, people always ask me, well, how did you do it? And I want to make sure folks know that, there was a lot of time during college and post-college when I was figuring out what I wanted to do, and everyone else pretended that they knew what they wanted to do. Some people did, right?
Sure.
Wondering, oh my God, am I lost? Am I making right decisions? Should I just set up, because I had gotten into law school, should I just go to law school? And, it's easy to say this looking back. So one is I want people to know you're going to feel agita. Like your tummy's going to hurt. Your parents are going to tell you, hey, why don't you have a job yet? Your friends are going to be making money when you're not. But for me, what in retrospect the story is you're gonna work, whether you love it or not, more than you sleep, and maybe even more than you're with your family. So you have to love what you do. And so when I look about how I kind of progressed and found my career, in retrospect, it wasn't like I was goofing around and couldn't figure it out. I actively, what I say is, checked things off the list. And some people are lucky. Some people, maybe you always wanted to be in communications, and, God bless you. I mean, what a weight off your shoulders.
Absolutely.
But I think a lot of people, and I knew other folks who were pre-med like me, you're starting that journey, so you're just going to finish it because that's what you started doing. And you just got to make sure you love what you're doing. And if you don't, if you actively check it off the list by saying, like, so for me, I did an internship, I took a bunch of classes, and I was like, you know what, it's not for me. Instead of saying, oh man, what am I going to do next? Check, what do I want to try next?
Sure.
And then you go all in on that, on the law stuff, took all the classes, had a bunch of internships, and got into school. And at the last minute, I was like, you know what, this is not for me. And, I can tell you at some point how I ended up in marketing. But this whole idea of, there's never a hard date, especially when you're young.
Sure.
Where you're going to say transformation is going to happen. You just need to be responsible and continue to go after it. But there is no end date because you're doing this the rest of your life.
Sure. No, absolutely. I think that makes a ton of sense. So how did you transition into marketing?
So this is crazy. So my senior year, I I finished my finals before one of my apartment mates.
Okay.
And I guess the statute of limitations is done now, so I can talk about it, 30 years later. But he had 2 finals and a paper left, and the paper was in marketing. And he said, "I'll give you $20 if you write my paper."
$20? That's it?
Well, I graduated
That time,
in
maybe.
1990, and I needed some money.
Sure.
And it was an advanced marketing class, but I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I read the case, and I just knew, I was like, oh my God, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I had never even thought about it before. And so, part of me was panicked, which is like, how am I going to get a job?
Right.
How am I going to do this? I just did a case study. And by the way, he got a really good grade on it.
Of course he did.
How do I figure this out? And, took a little bit of a risk, but it was because I found out that this is something that I wanted to do, but it was literally that close. It was, helping someone with a paper senior week. And then I ended up turning down law school. Actually, I think I had deferred it for a year.
Okay.
I went abroad. I went to Israel for a year. I worked for the government press office there.
Oh, amazing.
But I also got a job in marketing on the side. And I went there because to be honest, I needed to get away from my family who was saying, what on earth? You've got all this college debt and so I got a little marketing experience there, and I kind of leveraged that to get a job when I got back here, and kind of the rest is history. So you never know when it's going to hit you, but don't settle, especially at this point in your life. Don't settle; it's going to be forever. So figure out what you're going to love, and then you never, as people say, and it's totally true. Actually, not totally true, because it is hard work. But if you love what you do, it's not really work.
That's amazing and great advice.
Yeah.
What an inspirational story for sure. So keeping on the theme of transformation, we know that it's necessary, important. So how as a leader do you encourage and persuade those who might not be open to change or transformation to get on board?
Well, I think it really depends on what the transformation is. When I started at Domino's, we had just come off of 3 years of negative sales. Our stock when I started was, I think, $12 or $13. It went below $3.
Oh, wow.
There was the need to transform. We needed to transform our product. We needed to transform our brand. And, we had thousands of stores around the world and tens of thousands of employees. And so I think, you can't just wake up one day and say, we're gonna transform. Follow me, or you certainly can't do so responsibly. And so for me, when I look at some leaders, I think the way not to lead, in my opinion, is by the biggest business card. You lead by facts, sure. and we had established a fact base of what was wrong and what we needed to do to turn it around. And it wasn't Russell's opinion. It wasn't the CEO's opinion. It was a statistically viable sample of U.S. citizens. And so, to me, if the data is there, then there is no convincing.
Absolutely.
I'm showing you data that says this is what we need to tackle. And I think that's the best way to align people. Otherwise, it's just everyone's opinion.
Of course.
And opinions during the tough times, don't keep you together. And if you're doing something based on fact, your likelihood of success is higher as well. So you don't set out, I think, to get people, you got to give them something to believe in. And that's, also what I would tell for your students, obviously making sure you understand market research and how to establish, the business plan, and all that stuff is important. But the other piece, and you're doing it today here in the interview, is platform skills. And when I say platform skills, is can you get up in front of people with that data we talked about,
sure,
and get them to follow you? right? I mean, some people like Dr. Cobain, like I'll follow him without facts, right? But he's got the facts,
Sure.
you know? And so in addition to making sure that you are prepared, I'd say just really work on your platform skills, both in small settings like this, but, you know, every other year at Domino's, we bring all our franchisees together and I speak in front of 10,000 people. And they're only going to trust me if I'm comfortable with myself and I'm comfortable being up there. And so whether it's 10,000 people or one person, really work on how you communicate.
Yeah, no, that's great advice and great to hear. You talked a little bit about some skills that you think are necessary to succeed. As you know, High Point University is the premier life skills university.
Yeah.
So can you share some of the life skills that you found most critical to your success?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the platform skills. It's where we ended up. I really can't underemphasize how important that is. Like I said, it could be when I say platform skills, it sounds like you're always standing up. It's not. It's how do you get people, how do you take others along with you? So that's one. I think the second piece is how you develop people and who you surround yourself with. You know, the interesting thing is, you know, you start your career, you advance in your career because you're a great individual contributor. Like for me, when I started in marketing I was a really good marketing assistant. But as you get higher and higher in your career, it's no longer about your skills as an individual contributor. It's about your ability to lead an enterprise. So, you know, my example would be you could be the smartest person in the world, but at some point, the job is so big, you can't do that whole job. And so you need to be able to get the best of folks who maybe can't do it as well as you, but you need in order to get the breadth of what you need to do to get accomplished. You know, and then as leaders, we can all figure out how we want to lead. I think the best way to do it is, you know, like I said, take others with you, and let them know that you're their champion and you're their advocate, because, you know, hopefully then they trust you and they want to stay with you, and you continue to surround yourself with folks who kind of think the same way. And so I really believe you get things done on a big scale through other people. And, you know, my approach is to try to, you know, lead by example.
No, great advice, great points. So when you're talking about leading by example, who are the innovators you look to for your own personal and professional development? And what sources are you looking to when you're seeking inspiration?
Well, that's it, you know, on the who innovators, you probably get the same names all the time. So I'll tell you a name just of an innovator because I have a good story about it. But then I'm not going to tell you about a person. I'm going to tell you about what I think is the most important, which is you need to be your own innovator. And so the key is, where do you get the inspiration and the ideas? But the quick story I have about an innovator is, so I'm pulling out, for those who can't see, because this is a podcast, I'm pulling out my iPhone. This is I think the 13 is the new one, right? And so when I worked at Pepsi, one of my first jobs is I worked on I think it was like the iPhone 1.
Oh, wow.
I didn't work on the iPhone 1, but that's when it came out, or 2, or whatever it was, so early iPhone. And this is when Apple Music first was big, because we used to have like tapes and records and all that stuff. You have no idea what I'm talking about. And so we had this promotion at Pepsi where if you unscrewed the cap, you get a code, and you sign up, you get a bunch of codes, you get free music on Apple Music. And so we did a commercial, Pepsi and Apple, you know, for the promotion. It was a Pepsi commercial, but we had to pass it by, you know, Steve Jobs, who's obviously an innovator we all talk about. But I'm going to tell you the story because, I mean, everyone knows Steve Jobs. But to me, this was such an insight of why he was so great at what he did. So, you know, we all made sure we had our Apple phones before we, you go there. No one knows. Of course. I think this was actually before Androids, but there were still Blackberries and other, you know. And, you know, we had him out, and he comes in, and he he has a kind of look on his face. And I don't, at that point in my career, I was just a peon. I didn't say anything. But someone asked him, what's the matter? He said, well, all of you have these, the new phone, thanks, but you got these cases on them. The phone case. Mm-hmm. Well, someone's like, wow, I've already broke mine twice, Mr. Jobs. Sure. And he eloquently and passionately talked about how painstakingly they thought about everything regarding the design of the iPhone. So, for example, like the outside, it actually could have been plastic. It was cheaper, but they decided to go to glass, and just every corner made it. And what he didn't like about the cases is the artistry, the passion. You didn't see it, at least in his view. Mm-hmm. And so, what do you notice about my phone?
No case.
No case, right? So this is God knows how many, 15 years more than that later, no case. And it was listening to his passion. And I think that's what you need to have as an innovator, is there needs to be, whether it's the design of your iPhone or something else, the key thing you need is just the passion and the focus. So then the question is, where do you go after ideas? I read a book a while ago. This is interesting for folks who maybe aren't as creative as others. It's not important. The name of the book is called "A Whack in the Side of the Head." It's not important, the name, but what he talks about, the author, is, for those who maybe aren't creative, is wear different hats. So if there's a problem to solve, we're trying to market, HPU, why to come to HPU. Okay, well, obviously, how would Dr. Cobain market it? How would Michael Jackson market it? How would LeBron James market it? Like, put yourself in other people's heads, and you come at things differently. There's a great story about a guy named Ian Schrager. So he owns a bunch of high-end hotels, and I'm not going to tell this perfectly, so please don't, listen to this. But no, I've been told this story many times, and I'm sure people. But essentially, how the story, the legend goes. So he owned Studio 54, which it was in Manhattan, kind of a disco, nightclub place. Sure. And supposedly he was in this big card game, and at some point, someone, whether they wanted to up the ante or whatever, they said, I got this hotel. Instead of putting down X amount of dollars, I'm putting my hotel on this.
Wow.
And I guess Mr. Schrager won. And so he won this hotel, and he went and he wanted to see what he won, because he was going to sell it. He was a nightclub. And when he walked into the hotel, he saw this big lobby, and it was completely empty, because you have to walk to check in. Mm-hmm. And what he said was, "Wow, man, they could be serving drinks here. This could be like a nightclub." And so he had this mindset of being a nightclub guy, and he brought it to hotels. So there's a whole bunch of, I don't know if they're still around, a big deal, but Ian Schrager hotels. But basically any cool hotel you go today that's got a lobby where there's, a bar and, music and stuff like that, that was inspired by him.
Amazing.
And so the idea of trying to bring another mindset, to a problem, is one, and then secondly, I'm giving you too much here. I'm sorry.
No, it's great.
But I think it's really important to read, not about ideas, but to get different points of view. Okay. And so because at the end of the day, you want to be the person who's creative. You want to be the person who's innovating.
Of course.
It's not, all right, Steve Jobs does this, and so how can I do what Steve Jobs would do? Right? And so you got to get the facts. But I think it's important to know, so it's important to know what's going on in society, because you can have the best idea. I mean, the example is, well before the Apple Store, there are lots of people trying to sell music through these phones, but it didn't work. But I think what Steve realized was what was going on culturally. And so I think when I think about what's going on culturally today, whenever I try to solve a problem, I try to figure out what's the tension in society we're trying to solve, right? And so when we turned Domino's around way back when, the tension of our brand was we were a pizza company and our pizza wasn't as good as it could be. And the tension in society, this is 2009, 2010, the economy wasn't good. There were banks going under. There was a big car bailout. You probably don't. You were probably 10 or something at the time. You probably don't remember. But there was a lot of things going on in society, and people didn't trust the pillars of society anymore. They didn't trust government. They didn't trust banks. They didn't trust companies. They wanted someone to tell them the truth. No one was telling them the truth. Well, we had this kind of scary truth to tell, which is that, our pizza isn't as good as it could be. And we felt like if we could do in our own little pizza company way, if we could break our tension, which was the same tension as was in society, everyone would say, you know what, Domino's is doing that. Why doesn't the government do that? Why doesn't And so we went on and we talked about how it was a transparent campaign, and where we came out and said, we're going to fix the pizza, and we did, and that it wasn't good at the time.
Wow.
And, the stock went from under $3 today, or this year it peaked at $548.
That's
and
incredible.
we just continued to take that. What's the tension in the brand? What's the tension in society? And that's how you come up with a big idea. And the best way, I think, to find the tensions in society, is just through being current in your reading. And we can talk more about that if you want.
Yeah, great. Well, talk about a transformation.
Yeah.
And I think the key to transparency and how you were so transparent with your consumers was really admirable. Seth Godin has said, if failure is not an option, then neither is success. So can you tell us a little bit about the most fruitful failure you've ever experienced?
Actually, what I'd say is I think failure, so I hate to disagree with him. I think failure is an option.
Okay.
And in fact, we did a commercial at Domino's about failure being an option. And actually from that, we made a big poster in the lobby when you walked in that said failure is an option. And the reason I think it is an option is if you're so worried about failing, you're not going to try to do something that could fail. And anything that's big enough that it could fail could also be fantastically tremendous. Now, your job as a business person is to make sure that in the process of trying to both fail and succeed, if something looks like a failure, you need to assess it and maybe not launch it, right? And so in that case, failure is not an option.
Sure.
But I make sure everyone at the company knows that just as good an answer for coming out with something as here's a great idea is this one's just not going to cut it. And if your folks aren't comfortable doing that, and that's seen as a failure, saying we shouldn't do something is as much as a success as saying we should do something, as long as you've kind of gone all in. So I'm not sure I totally agree with that.
No, absolutely. Completely fair.
Yeah.
So, Russell, I'd like to wrap up with a question about values.
Yeah.
Located on our High Point University promenade is a quote etched in a stone paver from Roy E. Disney. And it says, when your values are clear to you, making decisions becomes easier. So what are the values you live your life by?
I mean, it's pretty simple for me. It's just the golden rule, is to do unto others. And, I think that's something that a lot of folks can learn today.
Absolutely.
And, like I said, there, as a leader, you're going to be, once you get a title, you got to figure out how you want to lead. If you want to lead through fear, or if you want to lead through intimidation, there'll be people who follow you and do that. But I'm a big believer in just doing unto others. And then the folks who are attracted to that, then you surround yourself with that. And, your job is to teach them, and then their job is to give it back.
Absolutely.
And then I think you create an ecosystem that, to get back to where we started, it's no longer about you as an individual contributor. it's about the ecosystem that you created. And I prefer to be in one that, where everyone is, we're going to be hard workers, hard charging, but, we're working, we're working to fulfill the positives that the team is trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. That's inspiring advice. Thank you so much for sharing your extraordinary achievements with us today, Russell. We're so grateful for your commitment to mentoring HPU students and joining a remarkable, innovative program that inspires our students and campus community. And thank you all for joining us on the Access to Innovators podcast, powered by High Point University.